and also I wrestled. I stopped doing jiu-jitsu when I was about a purple belt, and just wrestled for a while, like freestyle wrestling. I really fell in love with the art of freestyle wrestling, and I also did boxing. I stopped doing jiu-jitsu and just wanted to do MMA. I really enjoyed MMA, training MMA. So that was kind of my. That's why I stopped doing jiu-jitsu for a while. During that time, I was teaching jiu-jitsu at UCLA. They had an extracurricular program, so I was teaching jiu-jitsu there, and then I also started wrestling. And then at one point, I stopped doing jiu-jitsu. I actually stopped going to class for myself and started doing wrestling. I started wrestling at R1. It was called Raw. It was at in El Segundo. It was by the LAX airport. There was Rico Ciparelli, who was I think 3-time All-Star American wrestler. I think he was a student of Dan Gable. He was I think 3-time NCAA Division I champion, high level. And then there was also Frank Trigg. He was also like super high level. And then there was a Russian, like I think European champion. Anyway, like 3 wrestlers. They opened kind of MMA gym. That was like Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu was one of the first MMA gyms. It was like the first generation. There was nothing. Everything was like separate, right? There was like jiu-jitsu, or boxing or wrestling. There was no one place to learn. And wrestling, there's actually before that there was no place to learn wrestling. If you join a team, if you're in the high school team or university team, you can't just learn wrestling somewhere in a club. This doesn't exist. But so I started at Rico Ciparelli's. I started to wrestle there. That's how I started to learn how to wrestle. And at the same time, I was going to LA boxing. Actually, my first boxing coach was Muhammad Ali's daughter's first boxing coach. Yeah. I forget his name now. But yeah, I learned from him, and then I moved to Billy Slayton's boxing gym, Broadway gym it was called. It was in the Watts area, in a not so safe area. But I wanted to learn boxing, so I learned boxing there. And then at the same time, I started learned how to wrestle at UCLA. It turns out they had a wrestling club at UCLA, not a wrestling team, but they had all these graduates and undergraduates that moved to UCLA to finish their degree. They were either high school wrestlers, some were like Division I wrestlers, really high level wrestlers. We had a coach there as well, like one of the professors or teachers. He coached the team. So then we trained 2-3 times a week wrestling, and I had a real big passion for wrestling. Actually, thanks to Ethan Milius, who was a brown belt at the time with Mark Lehman. They were teaching at Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu Club. Ethan started wrestling at UCLA, and he got me into it. So I stopped jiu-jitsu and just did boxing and wrestling for a while, and I really grew to love wrestling. And that's when I was, I think, in between the Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu and Jean-Jacques Machado's. And once I stopped wrestling and went back to jiu-jitsu, it really complemented my jiu-jitsu. It was just amazing. It was just a next level. Yeah, I wish I'd continue it. It was awesome.
Was it vice versa? Your jiu-jitsu complementing so much in your wrestling or not?
Actually, it's funny you say that. Actually, I remember a lot of the wrestlers there. They're like, "Hey man, Niko, what are you doing that weird jiu-jitsu stuff?" Yeah, I mean, of course, there's no submissions, right? But I would do things like take the back mount and then get a power half and turn them around and pin them. Like wrestlers, they didn't really do back mount. They didn't do mount, eye control. It was a little different pins, So I used a lot of the jiu-jitsu techniques to pin them. One would be like taking the back mount and then getting a power half from the back, and then cranking their neck so they have to turn their shoulders.
Yeah,
things like that. So I remember like they were like, "Yeah, what's that weird jiu-jitsu stuff you're doing?" But it's like, "Yeah." I was able to use them to pin. Yeah, that was, and then it really helped my jiu-jitsu, really complement my jiu-jitsu after, just like the control, being able to dictate whether the match goes down on the ground or standing? Or do I want to keep the fight standing? Do I want to take it down and get on top, or do I want to get out from the bottom and stand back up? That was very like what I learned from wrestling a lot, and of course the takedowns, like I said, yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, that was cool. That was the days where it was the first where MMA schools. I mean, back then it was not called MMA. Back then it was called No Holds Bar. It was
The whole
NHB.
bar.
Yeah, I would go to all the underground because in California it was illegal.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I would go to all the underground MMA events, no holds bar events back then, like all of them. Like I saw Tito Ortiz fight, David Tank Abbott, Carl Parisian, and all so many. Like a lot of there were in Indian reservations. A lot of these events, like King of the Cage and other ones. I went one where there was a huge riot. I think it was called the Ultimate Athlete. But I would try to find all the events. Some were in nightclubs in San Pedro, like in not so safe areas, where they had a cage and they would do the holds bar. Or one somewhere in the back of a gym or back of a house that the gym. So they were kind of illegal. So you'd have to find out. I would have to find out through calling a number or something where the event would be and what time. It was not advertised because it was illegal. So I was like really into MMA. I really loved it. And actually so before I started at Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu Club, I remember it was around that time that one of my best friends, Etchang, Pierre Soraputra,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
he's
yeah.
so I got him into jiu-jitsu at Hicks and Gracie's. So he was training a lot with Mauricio. I learned also a lot from Mauricio, and
Mauricio.
who's Mauricio. I forget his last name now. He was a brown belt from Hickson at the time. So he invited me. Etchang, his nickname is Etchang. His real name is Pierre.
Oh, Pierre, yeah.
Yeah. So Etchang invited me to go. He's like, "Hey, I want to take privates with Marco Huas," and Marco Huas was teaching at Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu Club. So we took privates with Marco Huas. That was pretty cool. It was one of the first places where everything was going under one roof. Like I took classes with Marco Huas. I took classes with Bas Rutten.
Bas Rutten.
I took classes with Bas Rutten. Mark Kerr was there. Dale Golar was there for wrestling classes. And then there was jiu-jitsu. There was first Ethan and Mark that taught the classes. And then later on, Marcus Vinicius came in. And now Marcus Vinicius actually owns the Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu Club. Before that, it was, I think, named a guy named Ari. I think it was Ari, Mark, and Ethan that got together and made Brazilian Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu Club. I think Ari was, if I'm not mistaken, he was the one that put the money into the place, something like that, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that was pretty cool because it was the first ever place where everything was under one roof. Jiu-Jitsu, pancrase, like kickboxing. Obviously, Bas Rutten is a kickboxer. So is Marco Huas. And then wrestling, Mark Kerr and Dale Golar, also another super high-level wrestler. They're all there training under one roof. And that was a really cool experience. And then, and then I moved to Jean-Jacques. And after Jean-Jacques, actually, I remember Mark Lehman would call me sometimes. I remember one time he would call me, said, "Hey, you want to come train in Huntington Beach for Tito Ortiz? Tito Ortiz needs training partners." I'm like, "I am there." So I'm driving down to Huntington Beach. Yeah, that was awesome. Mark was already in Vegas. He would I would meet up with him at I think it was Tito Ortiz's gym or somebody's gym in Huntington Beach. And I remember back then we called him Noodles. I trained with him. It's Jason Mayhem Miller, but back then his nickname was Noodles, not Mayhem. So we knew him as Noodles.
Why was that?
What's that?
Why was that Noodle?
Why?
Yeah.
I think because he was really lanky and noodly, maybe. I don't yeah, that was an awesome experience. So I remember, training with Tito Ortiz and Jason and Mayhem Jason Miller and those guys as a training partner and doing conditioning and sparring, and It's just basically me underneath Tito Ortiz suffering. and
Yeah.
and then I figured, okay, like I knew I was coming back to Indonesia. I didn't. My plan was never to stay in in the States.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so my plan was to move to move back to
Indonesia.
Indonesia. I always wanted to live in Bali when I moved back, and then yeah, so I decided, okay, I'm gonna before I move back to Indonesia, I'm gonna go to Las Vegas because Mark
Hmm.
is training there with all these UFC guys,
Yeah.
UFC fighters, really good experience. So I said I need to do that. So I picked up all my stuff, put my car in the U-Haul, and then drove to Vegas and got me a place there and started training at Novo União at
Oh,
John
yeah.
Lewis's academy. And I got really good experience training there. I continued my boxing with Skipper Kelp. He was the head boxing coach of UCLA. Not UCLA, sorry, UNLV, University of Las Vegas, and improved my boxing there. And so I had four different boxing coaches, and the last one was Skipper Kelp, really good boxer, very technical as well. And then there I did mainly nogi. I was really into the MMA. So I trained a lot with boxers, with wrestlers. One of my training partners on a daily basis almost was Roy Nelson, Big Country Roy Nelson,
Of the
Rico
country.
Chiapparelli. Yeah, Rico Chiapparelli was the champion at the time of UFC. Then there was Marvin Eastman. There was Phil Baroni. There was Kendall Grove. He won um, Kendall Grove won Ultimate Fighter season 3. Was training with John Stevenson. I think John Stevenson was uh, the Ultimate Fighter season 1 champion, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
And a lot of other guys, just got a lot of experience because like any given day, like different, UFC fighters would come in there. I trained with Robbie Lawler, Frank Trigg, Martin Kampman. 1 month I just trained with Johnny Hendricks and Shane Roller and Dick Richault. Those were like all-star, 2-time all-star American NCAA Division I wrestlers. Really good experience. And yeah, I did a lot of MMA in the cage, and also, nogi, a lot of nogi. Of course, gi as well, but not as much as the
Nogi.
nogi. I really like I think the MMA is as real as it gets. So you get to create,
Real fight.
establish habits. Somebody's striking you. The whole game changes when there's strikes, and if you never do it, you will never. Your skill set will not be applicable against strikes, and that's such an important thing. That's why I really love the whole the transitions and setups from striking to grappling and grappling to striking is so intricate and so technical, and it's as real as it gets. So I think I fell in love with the the intricacies of MMA, of mixed martial arts. Um, so yeah, I got a lot of experience over there. And then I remember one time I was already in Vegas, and we and Tito Ortiz had a training camp to fight Ken Shamrock. I think it was UFC 41 at Vendetta, 41 or 40. And so it was Rico Chiapparelli. No, sorry, Rico Rodriguez was the UFC champion at the time. So us three, it was Rico Rodriguez, Mark Lehman, and I. We were driving up in Rico Rodriguez's Jeep to Big Bear, which is like an hour or two on a
Mhm.
mountain, high elevation, to help out with
Ooh.
Tito Ortiz's training camp. It was supposed to be against Ken Shamrock, right? It was against Ken Shamrock. So we went up there, us three, and for the day. And I remember I was sitting in the like Tito rented a big cabin.
Uh-huh.
Like Big Bear is is the mountain where I think Oscar de la Hoya famously used to always prepare. It was high elevation, right? So the air is much
Oh.
thinner.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
why Tito went there. I think Tito Ortiz, after he lost against Frank Shamrock, he really improved his conditioning. He never, even if he did lose, I don't think he ever got tired anymore, just because he learned from that. He learned also from Frank Shamrock conditioning, and then he applied that. So I think that's why he chose to be up in Big Bear. So us three went up to Big Bear, and we just arrived to the cabin. Tito was there, Quentin Jackson was there. There was, I think, Scott Adams. There's several guys there, and I sat on the couch and I was like, the moment I sat on the couch, I was like inhaling. I was like, oh my God, are we gonna
Seriously.
train? No, you can't even breathe. You know, it's like, what's going on here? Like, I don't know if I can train in this kind of altitude. And then Tito, because his fight is in the evening around maybe 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock, so he decided to always train during the same time to simulate the time to make sure it's
Oh.
the same time. So in the cabin, in the back of the cabin, there was a huge white tent. And then
Mhm.
we went into the tent, and inside the tent, there's a huge black octagon. It was really awesome. And that's where we trained for help Tito out for his camp. And it
For
was
how long?
basically, you know, we only there for a day, us three.
Oh.
We only were, at least I don't know. Like I was there with them. I drove back with Rico Rodriguez and Mark Lehman. I don't know if they went again later, the days later, but I know we went there only for one day for one training camp. And man, that was awesome. Tito was training so hard. It was just us like shark tanking him in the middle, and we were in there for 60
Gee.
seconds or so. And you know, by the end of the training, like Tito, we'd have to pick him up from the floor because he was just completely exhausted.
Yeah, with
But
that
then
thin air.
yeah, but then you know, like yeah, he was just one after another at him, you know, and he'd hire training partners that were better at him at certain skills, you know, like leg locks because Ken Shamrock is known for leg locks, so
Mm.
he got Scott Adams to train and go for leg locks. Scott Adams is super master leg locker, and then obviously Mark is a wizard in jiu-jitsu, you know, and uh,
Yeah.
and Rico Rodriguez, you know, UFC champion. Obviously, he was a good training partner, and then Quentin Jackson as well was there, and the other ones I forget all of them, but those were the ones that were there. And then so that was a good experience for me to train there as well. And then we went to watch the show UFC 41 Vendetta. That was great. You know, Tito won his fight. But yeah, it was a really good experience to help out also with Mark with training
UFC
with Phil
fighters.
Baroni. Yeah, UFC helping them out with not only training partners but strategy, you know, game planning, um, preparing them. So that was a really good experience. And then I would come back, and then I moved to Indonesia 2003 to Jakarta. That's why I started Synergy. And to this day, I'm still. This is 23 years later. I still can't get enough of it. I'm always watching anime
Yeah.
and watching, and now of course it's cool to gossip about it. All the drama that's happening in MMA and in Jiu-Jitsu now, right? There's a whole bunch of gossip and drama, so it's fun days.